What's going on, everybody? Today we're going to see just how bad this rocker panel is on the 280Z, so stick around. Welcome to the channel, everybody. For all your returning viewers, welcome back. Anybody new, I'm Brian. This is Block Garage, and we've got my 1978 Datsun 280Z here up on my homemade rotisserie. Been doing a ton of rust repair since we've had it in the garage, and today it's no different. This rocker panel here is obviously no good at the back. I have a replacement panel for it right over here from Classic Fab. If it's like the other panels we've gotten, I'm sure it'll fit great. But in behind here, you never know what you're gonna see. I've watched some other guys cut these open, and this whole section in behind here, but behind the outside panel, is gone. I don't think mine's gonna be that bad because you can kind of see from the inside, and it honestly doesn't look that bad, but you never know until you actually open it up. So that's what we're gonna do. We're gonna cut this open and see what it looks like. Now I've marked up here and over here where the edges of my replacement panel are. There's actually a seam right here. This rocker panel here goes underneath this, what they call the dog leg back here. So that's as far as forward as that will go. And we've got rust there, so I'm gonna have to do a little bit over here, I believe. But the first thing I'm gonna do is, since I know this part, lower part is what's bad, I'm gonna start by cutting out the least amount that I have to. So we're gonna cut it right about here and see what that does for us. Just trying to cut the least amount of metal as I have to. I don't want to cut through those layers in the back because, like I said, there's multiple layers there. So I'm just kind of taking my time and barely cutting through. Like, I'm not jamming this through so my disc is halfway through. I'm just barely cutting through, so I know I'm only cutting this as much as possible. We've definitely got some rust in here. Overall, though, it's not looking too bad. I don't know if you guys can tell, but there's a decently thick layer of Bondo on here, so I'd say whenever they repainted this was probably already starting to rust or thin and, had some dents in it, so they must have smoothed it out with Bondo. But you can see the edge of my panel right there. I'm assuming it's just spot welded to the actual rocker, so we'll probably just grind that off with this thing. This actually worked quite well to get through those spot welds on that thin metal without cutting through the metal behind. So I'm gonna do the same thing back here and probably down here, because I don't know, I'm assuming it's just pinch welded down here, but we'll see. Back here is nice and solid. I know a lot of the ones I've seen, they've had to replace, all of this back here, and I don't have to, so that's very nice. So let's keep going. We'll get this off the pinch weld down here and see what we got. So since we found that Bondo down here, I want to strip up here and all the way along my rocker here, just because I want to make sure they didn't just load this thing up with Bondo and it's a lot worse than I thought, and I end up having to buy this rocker panel anyway. So I'd like to know that before I go and repair back here, just in case. Alright, as you can see, it actually looks very nice. I didn't 100% strip it, just got enough so we knew what we were working with, but all we've got for rust is up here behind the front fender, and then what we knew back here. So here's a good look at what we've got in here for rust. You know, it's definitely scaly here. I gotta see just how thin this is and if I want to replace this little bit right here, which should be easy if I do, because it's, you know, it's never gonna be seen. It's just behind the outer panel, so I could patch it real quick. And then we got a little bit right here. Again, it's never gonna be seen, so that we definitely have to patch because it comes from the inside of the car. And I would assume it's as bad as it is because of all that water we got in the car. But really, it's not too bad. You know, behind here is nice and solid, so we don't have to mess with that. So we just gotta, I'll probably end up having to cut actually this out anyway, because this right here is the rocker, continues back here and goes underneath this outside panel, but it's on the top of this panel. So I'm gonna end up having to cut this out here anyway to get at this piece back there, because I would assume it's rotten at least a little bit back here. So I believe that's what we'll do. We'll probably get a little bit of this cut out, but you know, this is all solid. They definitely had Bondo on it, but it wasn't, you know, super excessive that I absolutely have to replace that. So I'll probably end up cutting up a little bit higher. My piece goes up here and actually fits on this lip over here. So I might just, you know, come over here somewhere, or maybe even right on the body line. I might cut on the body line, because then we got a nice edge to cut on right there, and cut it off here on the inside where it's spot welded. But we'll see. Well, if I cut it now, yeah, I think I'll cut that now actually. I think I am gonna cut off up here, at least to right here for now. I'm not 100% on going up to the body line just yet, but I think, yeah, let's cut this off so we got a little more room and more visibility to fix in here. So I decided I am gonna cut right on this body line. I think that will give me the best chance of, or the easiest chance of keeping everything lined up and grab my welds off right on that body line instead of having to do it on a flat panel here. See, we got a little lip here where the outside panel fits over the inside panel. There's actually like 3 layers right here. You got the rocker, you got what goes up here for the door jamb, and then your rear quarter. So I'm gonna do the same thing. I'm gonna just grind that off with my little 1/2-inch sander, and should pop right off. I have to do a little bit down here too. This actually works nice for getting these spot welds out instead of drilling, because you don't have to worry about damaging the panel behind. You can actually see quite easily when this panel is separated from the one behind it. Now look at this. This will fit right on there. I trimmed this piece off at the body seam here too, but that'll fit right on there. With, you know, I gotta trim up a little bit around the edges. But we could just stick that on there right now, and nobody would ever know that there's this hole underneath there. But that's not how we do it. Try to do things as good as we can. Try to do it the right way. So that's what we're gonna end up with. As you can see, we end right here at this seam, or where this folds down. I am thinking I might trim it right here at this fold right here, right down along here, yeah, and along right here, and then come all the way over here and cut this part out. I think for now, we'll just trim it right here. And then I might just cut out this section here, because that would be super simple to do. Just basically cut here, cut a piece of rectangle out of my new steel, put it on there, right at that line, easy to do. So anyways, yeah, let's cut this section out right here for now and see what we're working with behind it. So that inner piece obviously does have some rod on it, so we're gonna have to cut that up. Let's get this little piece off the bottom of the rocker right here. We definitely got some rot here in this inner panel. Like I figured, it's all the way right over here. It actually goes a little further than I thought, but that panel only ends right here. I'm assuming it's for extra strength around. No, because it's not even attached. So this is your seatbelt mounting point right here. But it's actually, that's just the skin on the inside interior of the body. So, yeah, I guess we keep trimming. I'll trim right along here, and then we'll use this to make a new panel, which it should be fairly easy. I probably won't worry too much about making it 100% exactly as it is right now, because it's never going to be seen. So, yep, let's trim that off. Same thing down here, and then we'll get to fabricating, I think. If you guys can see here, we do have to do some repair on this section here. It was actually rotted through here at the bottom. So, not a huge deal. I will cut this out right here-ish. And it looks like we gotta do a little bit underneath here, but I don't know how much. This, you can see this right here is where my floor pan welded to. That's the back side of a couple welds that don't look so great. I mean, there's no issue with them, but anyways, so yeah, I gotta decide if I want to replace this right here. This down here looks fine. I could maybe just cut in just right here. But anyways, let's get this piece cut out, and then we'll worry about this here. And this is what you run into whenever you do rust repair. You know, when I first opened this up, I was like, ah, that don't look too bad. There's always more rust than you think there is. So I decided to make that inner panel. Now I don't have a brake to bend this, so what I do is just clamp it between a couple pieces of angle iron and hammer it over with my body hammer. It has a double bend in it, so after that first 90-degree bend, I had to get creative to make the second bend. See, it came out great. Alright, that was actually pretty easy to make. I don't have a brake, but just a couple pieces of angle iron and clamp them together, either the bench or the vise, whatever. We were able to make this shape here to match up with right here. Now if you look, this piece here, the lip doesn't go all the way to the back. About here, it starts to come up and ends right here. And then we got a flat spot here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut right about here on this lip, actually on the back lip, and we'll just bend that up and then weld it right across to here. Wasn't thinking I cut it on the wrong edge, but it'll be fine because we actually need to trim most of this off anyway. So I'm gonna go ahead and trim the rest of it. So there we go. Now we got that curve in it right there. And I'll fill that in with weld just as soon as we determine it's 100% and we don't need to make any more adjustments. All right, that piece is in. Got it all nice, finished, welded. We don't have to worry about grinding this down because you're never gonna see it, but it's perfectly where we need it to be. Will work great. So now we gotta do this little piece back here. This one is a little bit more complicated, but I think we can do it. I saved it and make sure it didn't get deformed when I took it off. So we're gonna use this piece to shape the new piece. All right, so what I came up with for this piece, I made this little pattern. Just shaped it around here, trimmed it off, transferred it to a piece of steel, and we're gonna try and shape this piece around so it fits just like this piece. Here we go. I think we got it close enough that we can go tack it on the car and finalize the shape on there. You know, if it's decent, if not perfect, but I think we can make it work. There we go, got that piece in. Fits pretty nicely. Might not be 100% perfect, so I didn't trim this edge off just yet because I don't know if I'm gonna need to move this in or out a little bit. I tried lining my panel up, you know, just setting it on here, and it looked good, but we'll see when we actually go to put that panel on the outside. So I might need, like I said, shape this a little bit, and then I'll trim this edge off to make it look nice. So next we gotta make this piece that goes in right here. Again, this piece you'll never see, so I'm gonna, you know, make it decent. But if it's not 100% perfect, it's really not a big deal. So let's get making this piece here. So here's what I came up with, super simple. Fits right on there just like that. There's actually a little bend right there. I'm honestly not even gonna worry about that because it's not gonna matter. So now we'll take our pattern and we'll trace it on here, get it cut out, and then we can get it welded in. Here's what we came up with. Super simple. As you see, we just cut everything out, cut a little V right here, bent these up, and then welded this back together right here. It fits good enough for this thing. I'm just gonna go ahead and weld it along here, make it fit as good as I can. Over here, we didn't worry about these steps because all I'm gonna do is I'm gonna tap this piece down to match up to that. Once we're done up here, we'll do some welding along the bottom. I did, in behind here, spray with rust converter because, you know, it was not scaly, but you know, there's some surface rust on this stuff where you'd never get it out, so that's a good place to use that rust converter. And then I ground it back down here where I have to weld, and I put some weld through primer down here and on the back side of this, so we can get this tacked in without any issues. There we go, got that all welded in. Like I said, it's not perfect, but we weren't going for that. It'll work, it's nice and solid. We don't have any holes there now. So now it's time to move on. Hey, so check this out. I just got home from work today. Gonna do some more work over here, finish up this section here. And it's almost 60 out today. It's super nice out. Don't even have to have the wood stove going today. 2 weekends ago, we got 2 feet of snow on Saturday. That's all gone, it all melted over the last week. And then we got another foot and a half coming this week. So weather's been crazy lately, but it's super nice out, so I figured I'd take the time and get some more work done after work today. Yeah, that way we're just a little bit ahead of the schedule. So we're gonna get working on this piece here and see how that goes. Oh yeah, by the way, I sprayed a bunch of rust converter up in here. I sprayed it just as much as I could that way, and over this stuff here, some of it's gonna have to be ground off because we're gonna have to weld here. I'm gonna clean up some of this stuff here with the sandblaster, but overall, it looks pretty good in there. So I've been messing around a little bit, trying to get this piece made, and this is what I've come up with. Down here at the bottom, it's flat right here, and then it's supposed to come out at about 90 degrees to go on my pinch weld. So I decided to make that piece separate. That's this piece right here. And it's gonna go on here just like this. Just like that, got a couple clecos holding it on. And then this piece here is this main portion right here. You can see it's got a curve to it to match up with here, and it curves backwards also. It's, you know, it's got a bunch of curves to it. So it took me a while messing around with that, trimming, cutting it, bending it, and I've gotten it to fit nice enough that I'm happy with it. So it's gonna go right there. Remember, this needs to sit a little bit below the rocker panel because our new actual panel that's going on here has to sit on top of it. And it's gonna go right about just like that. As much as I'd like to start tacking this in place up here, but I'm not ready for that because I gotta put my primer on the back side of it. So for now, we're gonna just tack this in a couple places, and then we're still gonna make this one panel right here. All right, got that all tacked together. Made a couple pieces back here. It fits decent, you know, decent enough for us. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna take this off and fully weld these joints here where this whole new piece is, grind them all down, and then we'll stick it back on there and make sure it still fits because it's gonna warp a little bit from the heat, but maybe have to do some tweaking a little bit, and then we should be good to weld it in. And here's what we ended up with. It still fits pretty good. I had to tweak it just a little bit just to get it to fit. But other than that, you know, I'm gonna weld it right along here and along here. We'll obviously weld it down here on the pinch weld. Gotta trim this end off right here because I made everything a little bit long just to make sure it would fit. You know, don't like running out of sheet metal. And obviously it's gonna get welded in here. I'll tap that down just a little bit, but remember, this is all gonna be hidden. So I think that's good enough. Let's get some weldable primer on the back of it and we'll get started welding. There we go. Got it all welded in. Not gonna bother grinding this because it doesn't matter. Up here does, because our new panel needs to sit on here flush. Same as down here. But the next step, one more thing before we put our panel on the outside. We need to get rid of this rust right here. So that should be pretty simple. Just gonna cut a rectangle out and just give it a slight curve. And it should go right together. So a couple things I did before I cut this piece out, since this seam is pretty important to get everything lined up, so I don't have a ton of Bondo here later, is I got this shape where it's gonna fit right here to match up as good as I could. You know, I bent this a little bit because it wasn't, you know, perfect, just curved it a little bit. But I also took this tool here and fit it on the old panel before I cut it out, so that I had the shape that everything needed to be, so that when I get this piece back in, I can make sure and triple check that the shape of this didn't get too warped from, you know, cutting and when I grind it and when I welded it in. And right now we're basically right on. So that's a good tip. If you guys pick one of these up, they're cheap on Amazon. I'm sure you can get them at your local hardware store and stuff. They're really made for carpentry, I believe. That's what I've been using it for and why I picked it up when I was doing some work in the house. But it works good for stuff like this. If you don't have one of those, you can just make it out of a piece of cardboard just as easy. It's just, you know, that thing's easier. So now we gotta weld the rest of this up, and don't forget that this is a step here. We don't want to make this flush. All right, I got that piece all in and grounded down. It's good, not perfect, but it's good. A little bit of Bondo, it'll be good. So I've started fitting this piece on now that I got everything else done, and it's mostly good, but I'm not totally happy with how it's fitting. So if you look down here, I've got the bottom edge lined up exactly where it needs to be, but I got a big gap up here. Like, this is sitting, I don't know, what's that, 1/8 of an inch up above here, which is odd. You can see the big gap between this panel and the original car, which, you know, that needs to be bent down some, right? But, you know, if you get all the way up here, like, it's not fitting right at all. I could push that back and tack it in and it would go, you know, like, but still it would be off. My gap would be off here with the door. So one, I'm gonna go get the door and I'm gonna fit that on and get it back, you know, help me keep this lined up where it needs to be. That way we don't get a huge gap or really tight when we get this done and go to stick the door back on. But I think what I might do to fix this is cut this right on the bend right here. That way I can get this panel exactly where it needs to be without this piece forcing me to put the panel, you know, one way or the other. Because like I said, it's not fitting 100% tight. It's almost like the whole panel needs to go up. You know, this distance right here is too narrow. However, that moves this up if I do that. You know, I don't have this tilted down at all. I did check that. You know, with a level across here, everything looks good there. So yeah, I'm gonna go get the door. I'm gonna throw that on, and we'll see what this looks like here, and go from there. All right, struggled, got the door on, but if you take a look here, it's just not fitting good at all. I mean, the door's not perfectly lined up. I spent a little bit of time getting it close. But you can see, you know, this gap here is different. It's hitting right here. Up here, it's actually too far back. So I think my best bet would be to just trim this off right here. Then we can get this piece in exactly where it needs to be. and then just weld that back in. You know, it's a little more cutting, a little more welding, but I think it's the best idea that I can do right now. Yeah, and earlier in the video, I decided to cut it off up here at the body line because I thought it would be easier than having a seam right here that I gotta fill and get straight, but I'm kicking myself now. I shouldn't have done that. I should have just cut it right here. Wouldn't have had to worry about any of this up here and trying to fit it around both this shape here. I could have got it right where I needed to and would have been a lot easier. Didn't know that before, so as long as I can, on the other side, that's what I'm gonna do. You know, as long as I don't got any rot up higher up here that I have to take more off. But I think that would have been the better idea and saved me time. So, yeah. Live and learn, I guess. Well, we're all ready to put our panel on. I got this all prepped and ready to go. And up in here, I sandblasted as much as I could. I obviously can't get super far up in there, and I also coated what I could with the rust converter to try and keep that as rust free as we can. Obviously, I can't get way up in there. It's not too bad, but there is some light surface rust up in there, but I have a plan for that, and we will worry about that later. So now it's time to get this piece welded on right here. Let's get to it. All right, now that we got that piece in, we need to get this piece that we cut off up here back in so that we got this lip here. And as you can see, like this thing does not fit well at all. So what I'm gonna do is, because this thing actually needs to curve out some right there, is I'm gonna use my shrinker and get this curving that way because it doesn't need to be so far in. I don't need to fill all this in. So let me go shrink that and I'll be right back. There we go, easy enough. Just put a slight curve to it. It'll fit on there just like that. We do have a gap to fill here, but I mean, there's nothing I can do about that. We knew that was gonna happen. So let's go get that welded on. There we go, check it out. It's 100% done. I got it all smoothed out. Looks pretty decent, fits good. I'm super happy with how it came out. You know, we had some struggles and learned some things. I learned don't cut it all the way up here if you don't have to. I think when I do the next side, I will probably just cut it right here and try to fit the new one up there. That way I don't have to mess around with this gap at all. It'll stay factory. And speaking of that gap, it's gonna need some more work. It's not 100%, but I figure get that done once I get the door back on again at some point. That way I know I got something to compare to and I don't get the body line way off. But overall, you know, from what started out as just replacing this outside panel, turned into replacing 1, 2, 3, 4 panels in all. Because we had 4 different layers in there that had rust. The inner 3 were all custom. You know, I didn't buy those, so that really extended the length of this project, but learned a bunch. Now we know it's 100% done and rust free, and we can move on and get started on something else, which most likely will be more rust. But if you've been watching and want to stick around and see more of the videos and keep up with my progress, maybe consider hitting the subscribe button. That way you'll get alerted anytime I put out a new video. Hopefully you guys learned something. You know, I definitely did from this one. And I'm going to be using it on all the rest of the rust projects on the 280Z. So hopefully I see you guys in the next video.